This is Dr. Bev Knox, and you are listening to my psychology tutorials. Learn psychology while you sleep. How are abnormal behavior patterns classified? The DSM was introduced in 1952, and the latest version published in 2013 is the DSM-5. The DSM is used widely in the United States. However, the most widely used diagnostic manual worldwide is the World Health Organization's International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems, also known as the ICD. The ICD, which comprises a listing of diagnosable mental and physical disorders, is compatible with the DSM system. The DSM is widely adopted by mental health professionals. However, we need to recognize that many psychologists and other mental health professionals criticize the DSM on several grounds, such as relying too strongly on the medical model. The DSM abnormal behavior patterns are classified as mental disorders. Mental disorders involve emotional distress, typically depression or anxiety, significant impaired functioning, difficulty meeting responsibilities at work, in the family, or in society at large. Please note that the behavior pattern that represents an expected or culturally appropriate response to a stressful event, such as signs of bereavement or grief following the death of a loved one, is not considered disordered within the DSM. If a person's behavior remains significantly impaired over an extended period of time, however, a diagnosis of a mental disorder might become appropriate. The DSM system, like the medical model, treats abnormal behaviors as signs of symptoms of underlying disorders or pathologies. It recognizes that the cause of most mental disorders remain unclear. Some disorders may have purely biological causes, whereas others may have psychological causes. The DSM uses the term mental disorder to describe clinical symptoms. Although the term mental disorder is widely used by medical professionals, psychologists often use the term psychological disorder in place of mental disorder to represent the fact that these disturbed behavioral patterns involve significant impairment of a person's psychological functioning. The DSM is descriptive, not explanatory. It describes diagnostic features, or, in medical terms, symptoms of abnormal behaviors. It does not attempt to explain their origins or adopt any particular theoretical framework. The DSM is based on a categorical model of classification, which means that clinicians need to make a categorical or yes, no type of judgment about whether the disorder is present in a given case. One limitation of the categorical model is that it does not directly provide a means of evaluating the severity of the disorder. Two people might have the same number of symptoms in a given disorder and both warrant a diagnosis, but differ markedly in the severity of the disorder. Many critics of the DSM system believe that the DSM-5 system should be replaced with a dimensional approach to assessment. The DSM, in more recent editions, place greater emphasis than earlier editions on weighing cultural factors when assessing abnormal behavior. The DSM system recognizes that clinicians who are unfamiliar with an individual's cultural background may incorrectly classify that individual's behavior as abnormal behavior. The DSM also recognizes that abnormal behaviors may take different forms in different cultures. Let us review some changes in the DSM-5. Some new disorders have sprung into being with the introduction of the DSM-5. Some existing disorders were reclassified or consolidated with other disorders under new diagnostic labels. For example, Asperger's disorder and autistic disorder were reclassified under a general category of autism spectrum disorder. Despite many years of debate, editing, and review, the final version of the DSM-5 remains steeped in controversy. Some controversies about the new DSM-5 include expansion of diagnosable disorders, changes in classification of mental disorders, changes in diagnostic criteria for particular disorders, and process of development. Advantages and disadvantages of the DSM system. The major advantage of the DSM may be its designation of specific diagnostic criteria. The DSM permits the clinician to readily match a client's complaints and associated features with specific standards to see which diagnosis best fits the symptoms. Criticisms are also leveled against the DSM systems. Critics challenge the utility of particular symptoms or features associated with a particular syndrome or of specified diagnostic criteria. Another concern is that the medical model focuses on categorizing psychological or mental disorders rather than on describing a person's behavioral strengths and weaknesses. Traditional clinicians have adopted a categorical approach to diagnosis. They look for patterns of abnormal behaviors that fit particular diagnostic categories. Another alternative favored by some clinicians is a mixed model similar to the DSM-5 approach that includes elements of both categorical and dimensional classification.